I can't describe to you how much I love this book, to the point where I want to finish the series and read it again. And I'm never like that with books. Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. So just a super quick video today. I'm gonna do my books that I read in March. To be honest, I read a lot less books than I thought that I was going to, but at the same time I discovered my new favourite series. So I feel like there's pros and cons to not reading as much. And the one book that I read was fairly chunky, so I feel like I've still read quite a few books even though I've only read one, because usually the books that I read are smaller, if that makes any sense. The two books that I read this month were A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury. Now, if you've been watching some of the other videos on my channel, then you'll know that these both are books that I didn't expect to enjoy but ended up really loving. And I'll start off with A Court of Thorns and Roses, and if you want to hear my full thoughts on this book, I have a sort of reading vlog where I read overhyped books and I do talk about this in much more detail. I really enjoyed this overall. I give it 4 stars in the end. I wouldn't say it was perfect, that's why I give it sort of a slightly lower rating. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought that I would. I loved the world building, I really loved Prithian, I loved learning more about Fae and the sort of rules of the Fae. It was very interesting to sort of compare it to the Cruel Prince series. That's the only other book series that I've ever read that is Fae, so it was interesting to see how these sort of are similar but are different too. It's funny because the opinions and thoughts that I had on this book changed so much when I read this book, and I've never really had that in a series before. Usually with the first book I enjoy that a lot, and then the second book is often a letdown. Like, I was racking my brains trying to figure out if there was actually a second book that I preferred more than the first book, and I don't think there's a series where that has happened. I'm trying to think, and I still can't think of a book series where the second book was actually better. It doesn't tend to happen, does it? Because the first one usually blows you away so much that you want to continue on the series, and then it's like set the bar. But I think because I didn't really have any expectations for this series, that sort of makes you love it even more. I think sometimes when we set our expectations so high, the book tends to be disappointing then because you're expecting greatness. But whereas I went into this thinking I was going to hate it, that the writing was going to be rubbish, and it wasn't. It's interesting because it's not a YA book, but it definitely reads like a YA book in some parts, and I think Feyre has a lot of growing up to do in this. I enjoyed the relationship between her and Tamlin, but it wasn't my favourite. I'm not going to give like too many spoilers. I wasn't really sure if I was going to enjoy the second book because I kind of had a sense of where it was going, and I was like, oh no, I'm not for that. But then as soon as I read the second book, I was like, oh my god. Like, honestly, I've not loved a book so much in such a long time with this book, and I did not expect it at all. I honestly thought I was going to read this and knowing what I thought was going to happen in this book I was going to hate it, but it was written so perfectly, and I can't believe I'm saying that about a Sarah J Maas book. But honestly, this book, if you've read A Court of Thorns and Roses and you were like me and you enjoyed it but it wasn't like the most amazing thing that you've ever read, but you're like, oh, should I carry on the series, should I not bother? Honestly, when I say this, you need to read this book. Like, this book is good, but this book is next level. Like, this is top tier. Like, with this series, it only really starts to kick off in this book, if that makes sense. I know some people didn't like the way that this book went, and I can completely understand that. And if there's certain characters that if you didn't like in this book, you're not gonna like this book. But I completely changed my mind about so many characters. Chapter 55, that's all I need to say about that. But it was brilliant. There's so much tension, the story's brilliant, the plot is brilliant, the world building as well. And usually, and I've said this in videos before, long books, they tend to scare me because it's a lot of commitment and I'm never sure if I'm going to enjoy the book. I just think, why would I want to spend so much time reading one book when I could read like 3 or 4 books? I mean, this book is just over 600 pages long, so really I could have read 2.5 books for this. So this is why I've only read less books this month, because I was sort of engrossed in this and then I just got busy with doing other things. I can't describe to you how much I love this book, to the point where I want to finish the series and read it again. And I'm never like that with books. Like, it's mental. I did not want to read Sarah J Maas, and I know I keep saying this and I sound like a broken record, but honestly it was the last book series I ever wanted to read, and I thought it was just going to be hilarious for me to pick up this book for my overhyped series and absolutely bash it. If we're going to be honest, that's what I thought was going to happen. I thought I was going to read this and I was going to pick it apart, like me going, oh my gosh, this is so cringy, I can't believe people like this, that sort of thing. But I loved it. Don't knock a series until you tried it. There's a reason why these books are hyped. It's definitely off-putting because you think, oh, am I going to be the only person that dislikes these books? But this book was amazing. If I could give it 6 stars, I would give it 6 stars. That's how high of a 5-star it is. There was no part in this where I felt bored. And usually with long books, like with this, there were some parts that I was a bit like, it's alright, but it's a bit boring. With this one, no, it just kept me hooked the whole time. I absolutely loved it. I'm probably like a failed booktuber, only read 2 books this month, but they were both brilliant books, and it's been such an enjoyable experience this year. As I've taken quite a bit of a step back from my blog, I've taken a lot of pressure away from reading specific books. There's a lot of pressure sometimes to read books that are popular or books that everyone else is reading, and I know these are, but I mean, these came out like quite a few years ago. Like I'm very late to the hype as usual. I've been really enjoying sort of properly exploring my mood reading this year, because a lot of the time I try and force myself to read books, and sometimes that just ends up in me not enjoying a book as much as I thought that I would. But I've not given it a book less than 3 stars so far this year, which is crazy. They were the 2 books that I read in March. Let me know in the comments what your favourite book that you read in March was, and hopefully in April I'll be reading a lot more books. I mean, I've already read 3 books, so we're definitely on to a better start, and hopefully by the time I come back to you in April I will have read those 2 as well. Thank you very much for watching. Bye!